Please make a video on dealing with anxieties and panic attacks. Of late, I've been facing these issues very frequently due to a constant worry about my future. I regularly work out and meditate, which is helping me to deal with it to a certain extent, but it would be very kind of you if you could elaborate more on such issues. So first of all, I can really sympathize. I know what it's like to experience anxiety. And I also know what it's like to have a panic attack. I haven't had that many, fortunately, but I know the feeling better than I would want to. Perhaps one of the worst things about these kind of feelings is that they can make it so much harder to do the things that you need to do to overcome them. So I'll give some tips, but it's really important to get some help if you have persistent feelings of anxiety and panic. A lot of universities have student support or counseling services, or you can find a therapist. And at the end of this video, I'll speak a little bit more about exactly why I think this is so important. So to try to answer your question, I'd like to break it down into two parts. The first is dealing with anxiety and panic in the short term. And there are things that you can do to reduce the unpleasant symptoms in the moment. But then we also need to think about the longer term, more persistent anxiety. So you mentioned that you're doing meditation and workouts. These can be great, and I think you should absolutely keep doing them. And if you find that you start putting those things off because there's too much to do, or because you just don't have the energy or motivation, this is when I think it's most important to make an extra effort to maintain those basic healthy habits. However, while meditation and exercise can help you feel better in your situation, they won't necessarily be enough to improve your situation. And sometimes we feel anxiety because there are real, tangible, practical issues that we have to address, or decisions or changes that we need to make. And the more we avoid these issues, the worse, inevitably, the anxiety will get. Another thing that people often miss with meditation is that it's all very well sitting for 10 minutes and noticing when your mind wanders and bringing your attention back to your breath. But the purpose of this practice is not to get good at sitting still and being calm when you have that designated meditation time. It's about being able to apply that awareness during your day, to be consciously aware of your state and not get carried away by it. One of the most important steps to help develop this awareness is to allow yourself some space throughout the course of your day when you're not sitting with a meditation timer, but you also don't have any incoming digital information. Now, because we have so many online devices, it's incredibly easy to distract ourselves through social media, news headlines, podcasts, videos, email, instant messaging, or whatever else you use as your distraction of choice. And these things, many of them are deliberately designed to be addictive, often by playing on your anxiety. So when you feel even just a tiny bit of discomfort, your habitual reaction is probably to go online. This has a numbing effect, stopping you from experiencing the boredom, anxiety, or discomfort of the moment, and denying you the opportunity to process what you're feeling. And those unprocessed feelings will only come back later, perhaps with greater intensity, if you don't address them. So I'd suggest giving yourself some disconnected time during the day, and perhaps also before you go to bed, and letting yourself experience the feelings that you're trying to distract yourself from. This is one of the key habits that I adopted towards the end of my PhD, getting away from the computer and taking walks when I faced a difficult problem in the lab or when I felt just too stressed. This gave me some space to feel what I was feeling, to calm myself down, to think, and then when I was ready to decide on a course of action instead of avoiding the issue by going online. But what if you're having a full-on panic attack? Then we need a way of dealing with that quickly. So the following suggestion I got from the podcast of Stanford neurologist Andrew Huberman, which I'll link to in the description below. This technique is called the physiological sigh, and it's a simple way to lower your heart rate and your physical stress quite quickly. So what you do is a double inhale followed by a long, slow exhale. So you breathe in fully, you fill your lungs, and then you take in just a little bit more air. You squeeze in just a little bit more before breathing out as slowly as you can. And doing this just 2 or 3 times is often enough to reduce the overwhelming sensation of panic back to a level where you can function. So these things work in the short term, but in the longer term, you may need to make some changes. If you're in a bad situation, or if you're worried about the future, perhaps you may need to make some decisions or do something different to address it. That might mean having a difficult conversation with your PhD supervisor. It might mean renegotiating some of your commitments to free up some time to work on your PhD. It might mean simplifying your goals in some way and deciding not to do certain things. It might mean looking at the job market to see what your future options are. And for some people, it might mean ignoring the sunk cost and walking away from the PhD. Now, I don't know what the answer is for you, and I don't think that you should make any sudden, impulsive, or irreversible changes when you're in an anxious state. And this brings us back to what I was saying at the beginning about seeking help from a professional. So when I was going through difficult times in my own PhD, friends would often just say, "It's okay, every student goes through this, you've just got to keep going." And they said this because they were trying to make me feel better, and because they didn't have the time, the experience, or the skills to help me figure out what I needed to do. But if you talk to a therapist, you can explore what you're feeling. You can explore what you're afraid of, what your options are. And maybe you can explore some different ways to think about your situation that you couldn't have found on your own. In this way, you can take some time to work things out, but without avoiding the difficult issues or difficult decisions that you may need to make in order to regain a sense of control of your studies or your life. So that's it from me. I hope you found these tips useful. If you have any follow-up questions or anything else you'd like me to cover, please leave a comment below.